welcome back to another episode of A Feminine Moment. I am Cherry Lynn, and I'm here again with Dixie Andelin Forsyth. Hi, Dixie.
Hi, Cherry.
Dixie is the author of Fascinating Womanhood for the Timeless Woman, now an international Amazon bestseller. And Dixie is also the daughter of Helen B. Andelin, who wrote the original Fascinating Womanhood. Mm-hmm. So, Dixie, today we are talking about a subject we hear so much about. We've had it on our list to talk about for quite some time, and we're excited to get to it today. We're talking about the alpha female. So, let me ask you this. What do you think? There might be some women watching that think, I'm not sure if I'm an alpha female or not. Or maybe they're not entirely sure what it is. So what do you think? How would you describe an alpha female?
I would describe an alpha female as somebody who is comfortable being in charge, who maybe thinks they should be in charge and kind of likes being in charge, or feels that, they know, kind of a path leader, kind of a person. We need alpha females. We need beta females. But more importantly, we need mature alpha and mature beta. To me, it's a matter of maturity level, not whether, because sometimes I get comments for women that think they can't be feminine if they're alpha, and that's absolutely not true, because you are what you are. You're born basically that way, alpha or beta, and it's a matter of how you use those skills. It can be a great advantage to be alpha or to be a beta.
Yes, we were recently given some constructive criticism on your book, saying that it was not for alpha females. I think that's why this is a great conversation to have today, because like you said, you're born one or the other.
Really. Yeah. I mean, if they say it's only for betas, they don't understand it, because It's not true.
And another thing that we were just talking about before we started recording is that your mother, my grandmother, was an alpha, and she wrote the original book.
Yeah, she totally was.
They came up with all of this, so I think that's a really good.
Okay, here.
I did not know that about her.
Here's an example. She was an alpha. I'm a beta. Even though I'm her daughter, I'm a beta. What it meant was it was easier for her to do some of the things she did as far as publicity goes than it is for me. It's more uncomfortable for me to do some of those things. Like, we were in LA last week doing some publicity things for Timeless, for Fascinating Womanhood, and some of the things that I needed to do were a little challenging for me. I had to kind of just rise to the occasion, kind of a thing. It would be easier for my mother because she was more of an alpha.
Yeah.
I mean, so in both cases, she did it, I'm doing it. One, it's easier for the other, it's not, but I'm still doing it. So it's not like you can or you can't. She found some of this easier than me, because I'm very much a relationship person, and she's a little more task oriented. Mm-hmm. So it's easier for me, and I enjoy that part of it, is the relationships. That's the part that makes it all worthwhile to me, is getting to meet interesting new people and form relationships.
I think that's a great point that you brought up, that the alpha, I've read this a lot about alpha females, is that the alpha female has a tendency, and this doesn't mean everyone, but has a tendency to be stronger task managers, task-oriented individuals.
Yes, and alphas can really benefit. I mean, everyone can benefit from Fascinating Womanhood, but alphas especially, because a lot of times they don't understand they're maybe coming on too strong. Or I have to have an argument because I have to prevail in this situation.
Yeah.
And whereas betas can learn more boundary setting. I don't think it's as hard for alphas to set boundaries as it is for betas, because they're worried about damaging the relationship.
And alphas are a very common word that I would associate alphas with is confidence. Lots of confidence. Your book talks about typically not everyone, but men have a tendency to be stronger task leaders, and women have a tendency to be stronger relationship leaders. So in this scenario, when you have the alpha female, I can understand how some women out there might say, oh, I'm reading this chapter and I'm taking to heart what Dixie's saying about task leaders and relationship leaders. Oh, it doesn't apply to me. But what we're trying to say is that you can absolutely, is that right? You can absolutely be the task leader in your relationship if you're an alpha female. But what advice do you have for those women?
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because let's say you're an alpha female. You're not an alpha female the same way a man is an alpha male. It's not like if you're an alpha, it doesn't matter what gender you are. You're still a female, and if you have a child, you still will tend to have more of a connection to raising that child in terms of how they're feeling, because even though my mother was an alpha woman, she was very good and conscientious at the details of raising her children. She still was very sensitive to their needs. Here's an example. There was when I was early teens, so I was at the age where I was getting really conscious about wanting to look good. I found these shoes in the window of a store, and I absolutely loved them. I could still remember how I felt about these shoes. And naturally, they weren't on sale, and naturally, they were kind of expensive. And so I remember my mother buying them for me because she knew how much they meant to me, because she could see how much I wanted them. And she bought them for me because she knew they meant so much to me. Now, even though she's an alpha, that was a very sensitive relationship kind of thing to do. And so an alpha woman is still a woman. So I think you're fairly alpha yourself, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It means there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So somebody told me recently, I'm alpha, so I apologize. And I said, don't apologize. We need alpha women. We need beta women. We need them both.
One thing I personally, I don't have any data to back this, but one thing that I personally believe about all alpha females is that they have this hard, you've heard the saying, the harder the outside, the softer the inside. I definitely think that all alphas that I've met and known, and this I think applies to me, the way that we are on the outside doesn't necessarily reflect what's happening on the inside.
Good point, because you are female and you still have a female brain, like we talk about in chapter 9. So it's not alphas equal men or women. It's not the same. There's an alpha female and there's an alpha male, and alpha males are a different creature altogether than alpha females.
Yes. What do you think are the biggest challenges of an alpha female maybe watching this and identifying, oh, I think I probably fall into this category, but I'm struggling understanding FW or feeling like I can relate to it?
I've heard some women, because I'm beta, so I'm doing it from more of my observations. Alpha females, when they learn about FW, have discovered, from what I've been told, that it's a little harder for them to kind of swallow their pride and learn, like when they're in a disagreement with their husband, that they don't have to win. They don't have to prevail. It's a little bit more of a challenge maybe, but they can absolutely learn it, and they do. And when they do, then they get very good at it, at knowing when to die on that hill, if you know what I mean. Because I was interviewed by a reporter last week, and she kept pressing the point of it's why should a woman have to basically cave in on this? She said, why should a woman have to deal with her husband this way, or her boss? And I said, she doesn't have to.
Right.
She doesn't have to at all. But I said, what is the outcome going to be of these scenarios? If you're certain you're right, you might be 100% right in a situation, is your whole goal to win? your whole goal, the point is with Fascinating Womanhood, the whole goal is to have a deeply romantic marriage. So when she realized that the goal is not to have things fair, quote,
Right.
fair, and shall we say fair equals just? Could you
Right.
also substitute the word just? Because we know that justice, everybody wants justice when they're wronged. Everybody wants mercy when they made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So justice and mercy always have to be balanced out, whether it's in Fascinating Womanhood and just in life.
Mm-hmm.
We all need mercy and we all need justice or want justice. Sometimes justice is not possible,
Mm-hmm.
as we know just from life. People often say, this isn't fair. And you say, when a mature person says, so what?
Life isn't fair.
It isn't fair. It was never set up to be fair. We keep saying it's not fair, all the while we kind of know it isn't fair a lot of times. So what actually works? One scenario we did about a boss that was really difficult. They're a super alpha, shall we say.
To clarify, this is a role-playing video that was
Yes.
recently shot, that will come out.
Yes.
That was recently shot about a boss and an employee and an interaction between basically two alpha style personalities in the workplace.
This employee handled him so beautifully, all the while smoothing things over. She understood enough about this man that she kind of knew, and she knew about Fascinating Womanhood. She kind of knew what would dissipate the problem. At the same time, letting him know that he was a little bit out of line in a very careful way. Okay, so I said, if she had stood up to him, because you could say, this isn't right, he's yelling at someone who's only trying to help him. She could have. She might have lost her job. She might have alienated him further. He might have treated her worse in future days. What she did was so beautifully done, and it was done to be a benefit on both sides.
Yes.
And I said she didn't have to do it. And this reporter said, well, couldn't she have just gone to HR and complained? And I said, he can hire and fire HR. He hires those guys. So he can't, in other words, isn't there some way he can get in trouble for this? No, probably not. And that's the way it is.
I think a lot of the questions that we get about this alpha subject from women, we get it from followers, we get it from people that don't like us, we get it from all it's coming at us from all angles. I think one of the common things that we hear is alpha on alpha, or alpha shouldn't have to step down. They think that to incorporate Fascinating Womanhood into your life as an alpha, that you have to sacrifice who you are. And I think that couldn't be further from what it is.
No, it's absolutely not true.
It's more about growing and saying, am I willing to, like you said earlier, swallowing your pride a little bit when the scenario calls for it? Or I think even being vulnerable is very difficult for any alpha personality, and that probably goes for males and females.
Actually, it's difficult for betas too, because it requires humility, and humility is something we all need to maybe acquire more of. Humility doesn't mean low self-esteem. Humility means a recognition of your maybe lack of perfection, maybe yourself in relation to the world, like that there's people that are smarter than you, people that are not as smart as you. Your recognition that you are not the be-all, end-all kind of a thing. Not that everybody thinks that, but in a way, when you refuse to budge, it's like saying, I know best, no matter who it is out there. Yes. And so it actually, humility is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated virtues. Because when you are prideful, when you are a proud person, you can miss a lot of cues. A humble person is less likely to make major mistakes.
Yes, and I think an alpha female specifically that can become a little bit more flexible in tough situations, in relationships, that woman has an incredible amount of impact on her relationship. She can accomplish so much. This woman is someone to be very admired if she can figure those things out. Same thing as if a beta female can figure out how to be stronger during certain times in her relationship or in her life, right?
Well, a beta female faces the challenge of always so worried about the relationship. You can be the extreme that way. If you're too beta, you can be so worried about the relationship that you don't take care of yourself. And that's another, you can be an extreme of either one. We're not talking about extremes, but it's smart to practice the principles of fascinating womanhood. It's smart to do it, and it's mature. What we're talking about is a mature woman who is at her best, whether she's beta or alpha. We need them both. And in fact, really strong alphas, males, often kind of like being with a beta female because they can put up with some of their stuff. This difficult boss, in that scenario, I wonder if his wife is a little bit more beta because he's obviously very alpha.
Yeah. Well, and that brings up a good point. How about those ladies out there that are alpha that married an alpha?
They might work well together because they're both fairly mature alphas. All men long to be understood. Understanding men is always going to give you a huge advantage in your life and in your relationship. And because men aren't the same as us, practicing femininity and getting in touch with what it means to be female, understanding feminine power is all a huge advantage. And then putting that into your relationship. And by the way, we don't talk about it that much in the book, but your relationships with other people, with your children, with your relatives, with your coworkers. This isn't something that you, let's see, do I use FW here? Do I not here? This book was meant to become who you are. This book was meant to become who you are. It is meant to be who you are because you, I don't mean you specifically, Cherry, but you, women, we are all in a way kind of fluid. In other words, I can be a better person than I am today. And I try to be every day a little bit better. You can be better. We can be more feminine, more understanding, more patient. Alphas can be just as patient as betas, and betas can be just as brave as alphas. But it requires maturity and understanding where your vulnerabilities and weaknesses are. I'm never going to be as comfortable as my mother doing some of the things she did, but I just do it anyway. That's my challenge. But a beta may never be as comfortable doing some of the things that are comfortable for me, but she can still do them, and it's effective, and it builds people and builds relationships.
Yes. What advice do you have for the alpha ladies out there? Because we made this specifically for the alpha females today. What advice do you have for them to get started?
You need to read Timeless. It's not really enough to just follow these videos because there's so much more. And read about understanding men because they are different, and especially the chapters that involve dealing with people who are different. And as you develop more of these practices and principles and you practice them, you can still be an alpha all day long. We need alphas just like we need betas, but you'll be a more mature, more tempered, more feminine, the better version of yourself.
I benefited so much from the study guide that comes with Timeless. So the Timeless workbook, it's really incredible. You can go page by page and read the book, and they go side by side, and it helps you to, it's almost like you have an instructor there with you if you're reading the book. So I definitely recommend that for, I mean, not just for alpha females, but for anyone out there that really needs a little bit more like one-on-one guidance with the book.
When you write things down, there's been studies that have been shown when you write things, even if you don't look at it again, you remember it better.
Yes, and there were moments in the workbook where I really had to just kind of sit there for a second and really think about my answers because I couldn't come up with them on my own. And I live and breathe this every day. You know, I'm on the Facebook group and the social media, and I'm doing these interviews with you, and for me to go through that workbook, I felt like I was really being challenged to go through
It
it.
becomes a home study course,
Mm-hmm.
which is great because we don't have a lot of teachers in a lot of parts of the world yet.
Well, thank you so much for all of your advice. I think this has been a really informative topic, and I know I took a lot of valuable things away. And for everyone out there that would like to purchase Dixie's book, I'll put the link below, as well as the link for the workbook. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook. I'll put that down below, as well as Instagram. Lastly, don't forget to hit subscribe. If you have any questions that you would like us to do a feminine moment on, we would love to hear from you. We know everyone out there has really unique questions, and we would love to answer your question on air. Thank you again so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.